So this is a question from a number four. Also, thank you so much, Keymakers, for your patience, especially today as we breeze through. So it's a question from a number four, 22-year-old, or excuse me, 24-year-old female. I have a difficult time being patient with my goals. I find myself frustrated when I do not do things right the first time. How can I help this? From a number four. I cannot help you. I have not. It's a natural, like for me personally, like it just something that occurs. I found over life that it wasn't even that I was trying to avoid anymore. The only thing that I could always tell myself is remember when you're operating something that is very complex, such as a life, you're trying to calibrate it first, and calibrations are made based on what appear like mistakes. And try not to take it too crazy on yourself, but it is a part of the four kind of perfectionist thing. Remember, four is very similar to how the sun also operates. The sun also is a big time perfectionist and systematic sign, number one. So it's that same thing. So it's not that you won't actually encounter issues on the first time of anything complicated. So having an idealism where that's not supposed to happen is unrealistic. And the four has to learn that, especially when fours are good for very long haul plans and situations, things that take a long time to get involved in. They're like kind of half of the eights, if you think about it. And because of that, that means that the complexity at times of what you're engaged in will be humbling to your skill set, which not everyone knows how to make something happen perfectly the first time. So that's what I have to give for a number four, as being a number four, and also being able to remark that, yeah, things get a little crazy sometimes, especially when I try something and it doesn't work. How I personally feel about that, especially when that's initially taking place on something that I put a lot of time and attention into, like the stream today.
From my studies in alchemy, one of the rules of thumb was to give yourself 3 times. Do it 3 times. And don't judge, but give yourself that opportunity to master it, because you're going to get it. I mean, you're going to get it. That's a given. But allowing yourself, the opportunity to figure it out.
Yes, and I'll add that as a four, and a young four, relatively speaking to me anyway, that you're going to have some frustrations. I think that is just because we do like to build, right? We create systems. We see the way through. And oftentimes this happens for us very early on. We can see the end as we're beginning. And so as we maybe physically get closer to the final end, a lot of other things have happened around to have changed that initial visualization that we've had as these number four visionaries. And so just to remember that there will be change, right? We experience corners along the squares, along the box, right? We turn these corners all the time. And that in every turn, in every change is the lesson, is the learning. So whatever it is that might be frustrating and not panning out for you now, this is a building block, right? This is a system, maybe 1.0, right? And as you get farther down your path, you're going to be building 3 and 4.0, and it's going to be based on what you did in these times that were perhaps frustrating, but again, very instrumental in this number four life that you are leading.
So what I found with working with a number four and also being a destiny number four is that this impatient can actually also be a positive thing. This being a perfectionist can be a positive thing because when you do things, they are brilliant. That's why you are perfectionist. You know what I mean? So in a way, I think in your younger years, you are still learning. So looking at a lot of the, what we would call negative traits about ourselves, in a way, these are things that we learn from. So specifically hone into, like, when you do have failures, or when you do have these frustrations, How are you berating yourself? Because that's the self-beating of like, and find ways of not doing that, So in terms of, like the life is life lessons. So, I think sometimes people, we go into our lives thinking that the obstacles that we encounter are like problems that we don't want to face. These are situations that we are put in so that we can learn from these things. So this frustration, this impatience in yourself is your part of your lesson. So if you look at it that way, you'll notice how the impatience with your goals actually can get you to that thing that's brilliant.
You know what? That's a perfect point. I'm glad that you brought that up because it actually.
Oh, I know. That's because I know you.
Some say they know me. That's number 4.
And what happens is like he will self-correct and be so detailed, but those things become like what you see, and you're like, wow. So just yeah.
I wanted to add also because I was also saying it brings a perfect circle because it's. Right before the show, I had this statement and I was going to try to write it down and I wanted to make sure it got out today at some point. And then by all the technical difficulties, it kind of went out the window. But when you said that, when you said what you said, it brought it all back to mind about how, well, the statement is that how if you, let's say, for instance, and this is very direct, but it's so simple to understand how a lot of this works. If let's say with your feces, okay, it's crazy as this sounds. If you ate your feces, you would get sick, right? Or if you ate even other animals' feces, you would get sick. I know that's a no-brainer. But it's actually a part of the body. So this is something that you do that if you directly ingested it, it would make you sick, but it is a part of your body. Also, this manure, as it's called, is the basic building block to things. So after it becomes synthesized, which is just a process, now it's going to be used to grow this plant. Now we're going to burn it up. It's going to become a fuel. Whatever it gets in, now it's going to be eaten by worms. They're going to break it down further. And then now it's going to become something that goes back into nitrogen, etc. So after the worst thing is synthesized, then it always comes out to being something that nourishes. And it shows itself in so many ways in nature. And the reason why this also came up was I started reading this book last night that Neva recommended. And right away, the book starts talking about all of the misfortunes that the people have kind of had. And right away, my monkey mind starts going like, geez, I don't even know if we want to even read this. I kind of got myself out of the vista of misfortune. So the last thing I would want to do is put something in my consciousness that would start breeding misfortunes, right? But then, of course, again, this is the narrator. So I have this constant building conversation going on in my own consciousness. And it was saying that. But actually, at the same time, just because another person had one experience with something doesn't mean that that's the experience that you're going to have. Actually, it says that in the beginning of the book, to be honest. And then on top of that, there's always an inclination for us to avoid what we feel like is going to be the thing that causes a problem for us. This is also the same issue that we're even discussing now with the 4s, because eventually, if you get frustrated about when you first try something, it doesn't work out, this will eventually lead to not actually trying anything anymore. And then the depression. And then that's kind of like the suicidal tendency of the number 4, unless one starts to actually realize, wait, this misfortune, if you think about it in life, and this is just common sense, there's been plenty of situations that were totally unavoidable and came across negative. And what we've learned is how that has become the manure literally for the next stage. So it doesn't mean that you have to continuously live in the quote unquote manure. It becomes how fast you're capable of synthesizing it, because it has to come in, meaning like it's like a stock of something. We have to bring in stock of prime materials for you to begin to synthesize and take through a process. And then how that comes in is sometimes just like if someone crapped on your floor. It's like, oh man, what are you doing that for? And then you got to go ahead and synthesize it and take it through a process, and getting used to how you do that specifically, which I think that is a big part of the uniqueness. Uniqueness is also not just, of course, what we're doing for the world, but it's also kind of how we treat ourselves and what we're doing for each other. That's not as universal, because you talk to yourself inside of your mind And a lot of this, what you tell yourself and how you feel about yourself, is based on your direct experience, which nobody has had. Even if they've had the exact same experience, but they've done it inside of their being, they haven't had the same experience that you've had because they cannot process it that way. So likewise, because a few of these questions are built on specifics, which is always great to get to, but there's a lot of intuitive nature to the body. Like there's a question coming up, and I guess we can begin to answer this now. And it's about, the doshas. There's a confusion somewhat of the dosha types, because on the internet, it could say one thing, oh, you're hot, you're spicy, you should be like this. Even in Enneaology, it could say this is the overall type of the dosha. This is the diet type of the person. And then the person find that that's not exactly them. This is where you have to use your common sense and you have to use your own uniqueness and say, okay, this is still a diagram. And let's say this is 60% true. That's why I gave that example in the beginning. If it's 60% true, you're already in the green because there's few systems that are 60%. If you're in the 70 to 80 percentile, then you're even, this is almost unheard of. So there's nothing that actually will peg you 100% because you're unique. But if you can get close enough to it, then you actually will find something that will be very useful for you as you go on with this path. But your ultimate gauge is you. Remembering that you have this compass. And at times, that's why mentors work, is because we like to have someone that tells us externally. That's what our brother Curtis was saying. Hey, figure out your friends, figure out the people that are actually around you, the ones you trust, the one who's seen you at your lowest low. And if you can call upon them and say, hey, what else do I need to improve on, without catching feelings and getting all mad and thinking that they're against you and that they're just like everybody else. If you have someone like that around you, you can be able to utilize them to be able to calibrate yourself further and to learn more about how you understand you. And that's why this experience, then it turns into fun, because it's no longer about how people how people feel about you. It's about human resources. How many beings can you get that are reflections of you to engage with you on your personal experience of understanding self? Because you can't buy humans. At least we don't have that going on a regular level. But I'm just saying, you generally can't buy a person. Like, okay, I'm going to give you $400,000 and you give me your body. So having somebody just there to actually contribute to you with their own advice is really priceless if you can constructively use it. So, these are just somewhat of the steps of, again, number 4, working through the process of realizing exactly why quote unquote negative things occur, or why quote unquote mistakes happen. And I know also even the solar path has this issue, thinking things should be perfect, almost to a point where it will exact retribution on others that are not necessarily as perfect as the number 1 and look down on them, when truthfully we need to just work on synthesis and how we do that. So yeah, that's what I got on, just the insights on number 4 and taking it from the base all the way back to the crown, right?